Everyone, welcome to this morning's criminal justice meeting. Call to order, please.
Commissioners Brown,
Present.
Fuller,
Present.
Harris,
Present.
Herr,
Present.
Vice Chair Rodriguez,
Present.
Chairman Little.
Present.
We have a quorum.
Would you please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, and Commissioner Harris will lead us.
Please place your right hand over your heart and repeat with me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
No presentations of any type. Any public business on agendized items? Kathleen, nothing? Okay. Has everyone had a chance to review the consent calendar of February 14th? And
Move to accept.
we have a move to accept by Commissioner Brown. Do we hear a second?
Second.
A second by Commissioner Harris. Please vote. Six-zero unanimous approval of. No new business, so let's get right into the. W. Scott, how are you, sir?
We're waiting on some work the machine over here.
Okay, then can we go to Vic, California Highway Patrol? You need some time, sir? Yeah, okay. How are you, sir?
I'm doing good. How are you guys?
Good.
So I wanted to kind of talk a little bit about some of the services that we've been offering to you lately. We've got a couple of programs that we've really been pushing heavy. Number one is the Child Safety Seat Program, and we just had a big event near Jet Hawk Stadium the other day. We had about 50 or so people participate, and we're trying to really get that word out there. Pushing it on our Facebook page that we do that every single day at our office. We can make appointments and people can schedule those. We've had statewide a lot of increase actually this year so far in the number of child fatalities and injuries as a result of people from not being seatbelted in. It goes for adults too. We're seeing a pretty big upward trend in the number of accidents we're having where people aren't wearing their seatbelts. Overall, the vast majority of people, 90+% wear them, but it seems like the same people that are driving in the way that you drive when you crash are also not wearing their seatbelts. And the fatal was as a result of the person not wearing their seatbelt. They would have. It was a crash that they would have survived had they been wearing it. So we're really pushing that. We are doing really well this year so far with the enforcement aspect of our job, and also we're trying to combine a lot more of the educational aspect out there at the same time. We've held several different every 15 minutes programs over the last several months, and we've also been pushing the Start Smart program for the teen drivers. And the more kids that we can get into that program, I think the safer we're all going to be. Especially in the summer months that are coming up soon, where we see every year we'll see an increase. They call it the 120 most dangerous days, where we have young people that are driving more frequently because now they're not in school and they're out in the summertime. A lot of them just got their driver's license, and we definitely see an uptick in fatal and serious collisions. So we're trying to combat that with those specific programs. And we are going to be switching to from 10-hour shifts, which what we're currently on, to 9-hour shifts coming up in July. So that should be a pretty big increase in the number of officers that we're seeing out on the road. I know last month we talked about how everybody was noticing that we're out there more. That's one more thing that we're doing to try to enhance the number of bodies that we do have out there enforcing the law and doing that visual presence. We get a lot of feedback from the community asking us to be out there, saying, calling us up and saying this specific location is a problem near where I live or near our school. And my goal is to be as responsive as we can to the people that are asking for those services. And I think we do a good job with that. We have a streamlined process, so if anybody does want to ask for us to be at a certain location because they believe we can help a specific problem that's going on, say it's a stop sign that nobody stops for, or a stretch of roadway that people drive too fast on, which is common out here, we can deploy a radar trailer, we can deploy our people out there to case out the situation and then try to develop a response. And we always make personal contact with the person that's making the complaint so that they know that, we can talk to them about specifically what they're talking about. So it's all about just being more open and available to the public for their specific concerns. And if you go to our Facebook page, we generally try to post not just safety messages, but we also try to show what we're out there doing. And 98% of the feedback we get from the public when we show the enforcement side of it is positive, encouraging us to do more of it, because I think people are kind of fed up with some of the unsafe driving that they see in the community. And I think us, along with the Sheriff's Department, it's our roles to be responsive to that need that's out there and try to prevent these fatalities that we're having. That's all I have.
Any questions? How many of those people on the child safety seats can come in that are installed wrong?
Well, they're of the ones that are pre-installed. It's down. It's a little bit better than it used to be. I think the last number I saw, it was still in the high 80 percentile range of ones that are installed improperly, and that could be anywhere from just a minor technicality that's wrong with it or something that's more serious. But in my experience, the ones that I see generally, it's more complicated than people realize, and when they try to do it on their own without knowing exactly what they're doing, it tends to not always end up correctly in a way where it's going to prevent an injury.
Amazing. Anything? Dr. Brown?
And I would just mention, I'm sure you would agree with me, that the fatalities is the tip of the iceberg. That is, we see in the emergency department all kinds of people that were severely injured in accidents. They don't die, but they go on to have their lives changed in dramatic ways. So thank you for what you guys are doing.
Thank you, sir.
Thank
Always.
you.
Thank you. Deputy Scott, or Mr. DeRico.
Maybe in light of that too, as well as we talk about, because the biggest complaint we get here and the things that you see in the newspaper are regarding speed. And that's usually a giant contributor to a lot of the issues that we're having. And I appreciate all the stepped up enforcement from the CHP that we've been seeing out there and their involvement with the community. Maybe what I could do is bring someone in from our traffic engineering for a presentation at the next meeting to talk about publicly how the state sets our requirements for setting speed limits. Okay, because I think there's an impression out in the community that we just set them as a city and make it.
There is, yeah, that's right.
And that is far from the truth, and the reality of it is it's kind of ludicrous how it's done. So it'll be an interesting conversation I think I'd like to bring forward at the next meeting with your permission. No, we don't control them. We have that's why I want to bring in and have them explain it, because it's an interesting concept as you look at it, but it's based on an overall percentage of how folks travel through that area, that speed, and it's based on that percentage. And it's something we go through every year, and we step up enforcement with the CHP and the Sheriff's Department in areas that habitually get raised every year based on how that study's done. So
how is the study done?
Well, that's why I want to bring them in, okay?
Yeah.
Because I don't want to say anything wrong.
I was going to say, is it the amount of tickets that are written and said, hey, this guy was speeding 65 miles an hour, right. Let's raise the limit.
It's actually interesting when you listen to how it's done and and I think these guys can speak to that. It's interesting to look at how they came up with this concept. And the idea of it was to prevent speed traps. That was the whole mindset behind it, but it's created other issues. So I'd like to bring that in for a presentation just because our traffic engineers are experts on it and they can explain it very well. That'd be interesting.
Thank you, Lee. Deputy.
Thank you to the commission for having me. I would, with St. Patrick's Day coming up, I wanted to say a quick St. Patrick's Day joke. Okay, so try and liven some things up. What do you get when you cross a four-leaf clover and poison ivy? You get a rash of good luck. Something like that. So,
Very good. You hear the laughter. Way to go. I like it.
sometimes it's a little dry, so I try to add a little flavor.
We expect one
seasoning.
every month, and I take it.
It was requested amongst
You've set
some
a
of the
precedent.
attendants.
Yeah, yeah.
So, all right, so go ahead and slide forward. For the burglary suppression team this month, we had 9 felony arrests. 1 search warrant was served. Warrant arrest was 6. Firearms recovered 1. Recovered property $160,000. Lancaster team had 31 felony arrests, 31 misdemeanor arrests for a total of 62, 2 stolen vehicles, and 2 recovered firearms. Robbery team did 13 felony arrests, 2 search warrants, 0 firearms recovered, total of 26 robberies for the month, 16 armed, 10 strong arm. Crime prevention, we did most wanted, AV's most wanted. We did neighborhood watch. We also did gun and safety storage, where we talked to people in the community about how to properly store their firearms, keep them locked up, keep them away from children, and to educate the people in their households where the guns are and how to properly store them safe and keep them away from children. We had coffee with the deputy at Lemon Leaf. We did a big business for breakfast at the chamber. We also did K9 Enterprise Academy. That says there at the Lemon Leaf, we're showing in the picture there the material we use for the gun safety. Business for breakfast, where we were able to interact with the local businesses, ask questions to us about the crime watch and other issues that the businesses here locally have, concerns. We'll interact with them one-on-one, answer questions, which was great. And then we had the K9 Enterprise at an elementary school, where they went over K9 unit and talked about how they serve the community in their capacity. So we'll go to the CompStat report. Go ahead and click forward. Monthly trends for February of 2018. Robberies are trending down below average. Aggravated assaults also trending downward. Burglaries, just a slight spike above average, but you can see how we're kind of evening out along the average line, baseline. Larcenies are also trending towards average. Grand thefts are trending downward. I'm going to go to the Leaps one. Leaps progress report. During February 2018, LSD formally logged 157 Leaps service calls where tactical field operations were supported. Leaps was dispatched 165 times, totaling 48.5 hours, and was airborne and available for 293.9 hours. It assisted in 21 arrests, 48 fights and assaults, 22 burglaries and robberies, 8 traffic stops, 21 other suspicious circumstances, 9 persons with guns. Of those, 39% involved people, 19% involved property, 60% was arrests and detentions, 13% vehicles, and 13% observations. Okay. That concludes my report, sir.
Any questions or?
I have a question that's not related to your reports. Just out of curiosity, I noticed that you have the black band on your badge. I'm assuming that's for a fallen service member.
Yes, sir.
How exactly does that time frame work? Because I see some people with them, some without them. And my daughter was asking that question. I'm like, you know what? I don't know. And I was just curious to know what dictates and what's the time frame.
Usually, when there's an officer that's killed in the line of duty, it's usually authorized by the department, and there's a process for that. Once it's authorized, then we place the band on our badges. So that's typically what it is. It's ordered by the sheriff.
For what length of time? Because I see some with them and some without. That's why I'm asking.
Yes, when he's laid to rest.
Thank you.
I do have a question. Just if we can go ahead, like I said, if we can add just the sexual assaults back too.
Yes, I'll include, make sure for next meeting we'll have the sexual assaults. Also, I'll be working on trying to get the domestic violence is separated from the regular assaults if we can have that for the purposes of the commission.
Thank you.
And I think as we look at that, that needs to be on clean data, on LARSIS data, not on RAPS data. Okay, understanding the difference.
Yes.
RAPS is when they're dispatched the call, and that goes in that statistical database, but especially as it relates to those two instances, that needs to be what comes out in LARSIS for a clean data run. So that's at certain points during the month that Alan puts together, so that hopefully what we need to do is target that before this meeting every month, so we can get that LARSIS information.
Sir.
On the LEAPS program, that's Lancaster area. So if there's an active pursuit, how far can they go?
As far as we can send them. If there's
Okay.
a request from our sister cities or the county area, we will send that aircraft.
So
there.
if there's something that happens and they go south, then that could still
Go
be,
as far as range as relates to Archie, distance. Archie, what's the distance we have for our system?
It really depends on a lot of conditions, but we're lit up to almost to having an S. You're headed south on the 14, for instance.
so you can't fly past that.
Well, unless we put the mobile unit out that tracks farther beyond that.
Oh, I see. Okay, I got it.
Because there's a distance requirement from the antenna and the
Okay.
collection and all that, so.
Gotcha.
But again, we've dispatched it many times out of the city at the request of other agencies.
Okay.
And with the mobile system, Lee has said to use it out in Valley Animal, over on 138, headed that way towards the 50 number of times, particularly to find lost persons.
So it's better than our cell service that we have now.
Yes, sir.
Thank God. Thank God. Thanks, Archie. Any questions for? Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Maybe you can expand on some of the statistical information that came up.
Morning, Commission. Thank you again for having me here. Captain Weber is downtown filling in as the division commander, so I am turning filling in as the acting captain for the next few days. But I just wanted to touch on a few things that are going on in Lancaster right now. This morning I've been on my phone monitoring the school walkouts. I don't know if you're familiar, but since the shooting in Parkland, Florida, the schools across the United States have scheduled walkouts this morning, a 17-minute walkout. I'm happy to report that the high schools that we did have here that had walkouts, all the students remained on campuses. There's no incidents. They're all back in class as of about 5 minutes ago. Sounds like Lancaster, Quartz Hill, and I think AV had between 150 and 200 students that actually walked out, but they never left the campus. Our ex-Paris high school had about 5, so no incidents there, so that was good. I don't know if you're familiar, but Lancaster has the largest school contract of any of the stations in the county. We have the most lucrative contract, the most deputies, so we police the most schools of any of the other stations. So in order to keep all those kids in with the deputies we have was an accomplishment for them. So I think they did a good job with organizing that with the school and keeping all those kids on campus, keeping them safe with no incidents. Speaking of active shooter training and school shooting training, I actually got hit up yesterday by the chief of the division to spearhead a new training program for the department. So the department now is going to go to a standardized active shooter, school shooter training so that every school district, every school within the county does it the same way. So because Lancaster has such a large school contract, we do these drills every year. We do an active shooter drill at one of the high schools within the district every year. some schools in other jurisdictions don't do any because they don't have the resources. So what the sheriff has decided is that every station of the 23 patrol stations in LA County, everybody's going to do it the same. So no matter if you transfer to another station or you happen to be working at another station, you're all going to get trained the same way. That way, when you respond to an incident, it always is responded to the same way, textbook. So you will see a dramatic increase in the training that we have, especially up here in the Antelope Valley. I try to coordinate right now that we're probably using Parkview Intermediate School. It's co-owned, I guess, by the school district and the UAV. So I've already got some preliminary permission for them to use that school. So we're going to see a dramatic increase in the training for active shooter drills and school shooter drills.
There'll be programs throughout the high schools to implement that
Well,
then?
the Community Partnerships Bureau, which falls under Countywide Services Division, is the lead on this project. And they're basically filtering the information down to the schools and the individual stations.
How does the college come into effect on something like that? Would the college be part of that too?
They are, because they're part of our contract.
Okay, cool.
So,
On top of that, we already have school site security plans for each school that are on file both here at the city and at the station, and we update those regularly. And so it's been a very rigorous program for some time here. So I'm kind of happy to see that we're going to set a standard for the rest of the county. The school deputy program was instituted back in the 90s here in the Antelope Valley and started just with the high school district, now expanded to all the elementary districts as well. And I think the thing that's interesting about it is, for years what we were doing was trying to run a modified program that almost went away because of some issues within the department on managing a special rate for that school program, because it's a 9 to 10th month program. What do you do with those deputies the other couple months? And thank goodness contract law stepped in and actually came up for a rate, but for a time we were so afraid we were going to lose it, we were actually subsidizing that program at the city for the districts as well, because there's a huge amount of intelligence gain in things that we get from those schools, especially from the students and from the administration. So it's been a great program. I'd like to see expansion of it to more items in our elementary schools, because to be quite honest with you, we have 27 or 28 elementary schools, okay, and so we're pretty thin there. That's something we need to address this year. But it's a great program. We've even actually done active shooter training here for our city staff and our other facilities with the MOA and the LPAC. And the LPAC right now is a focus based on if we have an issue there, we have some issues we need to address there for security.
we're very fortunate in that we have a full-time deputy assigned to every high school in the valley. So I went to a conference last week with Santa Clarita Station, Palmdale Station, Simi Valley Police Department, and Congressman Knight's office, basically to roundtable with other law enforcement agencies about what we can do or what the federal government can do in partnering with local law enforcement to strengthen these schools, basically harden these schools and give them ideas. And it was shocking to me to find out that there's a lot of school districts, a lot of large school districts that don't have the resources that we do, that don't have deputies at hardly any of their schools. Santa Clarita Valley, for instance, they have in upwards of 77 schools in the Santa Clarita Valley. I think they have 6 school deputies.
Wow.
Where we have over 25, 30 people assigned to the school unit at Lancaster Station. And then Palmdale has another contingency of just under 10, I believe. Santa Clarita has 6 for the entire valley. So we're very fortunate that the school district, contracts with the department to give us those resources.
Yeah.
So we have one deputy for every high school. What about, what's the ratio for elementary and junior high?
I believe the elementary schools, it's either 3 or 4 elementary schools to a deputy, and that deputy constantly roves. So, as Mr. DeRico said, I mean, in a perfect world, it would be great to have a deputy at every single school, but again, I think we're very fortunate when I started looking at some of the other districts or some of the other jurisdictions, what our ratio was compared to theirs. So I think that's done very well for us. The only other thing I wanted to mention, if you've seen the front page of the paper this morning, we had a fairly high-profile search warrant served yesterday. Just to give you some background on that, whether you saw the news or not last week, Palmdale was involved in a pursuit last week that ended up on a dirt road, and they had a barricaded suspect in that car for some time. LANCAP, our station problem-oriented team, they had developed information prior to Palmdale even arresting that suspect that he was in possession of some illegal weapons, including an assault rifle. Once they had already planned on serving a search warrant at his house, And once he was arrested by Palmdale, that gave him the opportune, moment to go over to his house when he wasn't there. So they called our SWAT team, Special Enforcement Bureau. They went over and served a search warrant at that suspect's house. They recovered the AR-15 and a couple of other guns. But that's why it was on the front page of the paper, just in case you were wondering. And the only other thing I had was, if you weren't aware, we had a deputy involved in a significant traffic collision this past week. I believe, and please correct me if I'm wrong, I believe the California Highway Patrol had tried to stop this individual at one point, and he took off in a pursuit. She was driving the opposite way, made an attempt, saw the cars coming her way in the early morning hours, made an attempt to pull over, but was still hit by the suspect driver. The suspect driver didn't survive. The suspect passenger's blood alcohol content, I believe, was over a 0.3, and he had mentioned that the driver had been drinking more than he had. But she's out of the hospital. She came out of the hospital the night before last. No serious injuries, bumps and bruises to her leg, some residual leg pain standing on it, but no breaks, and she's good at home. Okay.
Any questions? Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Mr. Franklin, how are you, sir?
Good, thank you. So I didn't have January statistics last meeting, so I have them now. For felonies in January, we filed 238 felony complaints, declined or referred for further investigation 123. For misdemeanors, we filed 670 misdemeanors and declined or referred for further investigation 120 others. In February, we filed 232 felony complaints, declined or referred for further 114. So the year to date through February is 470 felony complaints. As for misdemeanors, in February, we filed 590 misdemeanors, declined or referred for further 89, and the current year-to-date through February is 1,260 misdemeanor cases. In January and February, we tried a total of 16 jury trials, and that should put us on track. I would think that from the looks of it, about what we did last year, maybe even more, which I think last year we tried 153 jury trials. So we're going to be right around that, if not a little bit more. And then finally, I would echo what's been said about the speed and traffic fatalities. We get a ton of those coming in, and sometimes it's just speed and reckless driving, but other times there's alcohol or drugs or a combination thereof. And again, I hope at some point the legislature really takes a good look at getting some controlled driving studies done with marijuana impaired driving, because we're seeing more and more of that. And we file aggressively, but we need that kind of assistance. But it is a big issue here, and we do what we can to try and curtail the traffic related deaths, and we have a fantastic working relationship with the sheriffs and the CHP, and they do what we ask, and we then file appropriately. But it is definitely an issue, so hopefully at some point we can get those controlled studies. And that would conclude my report.
Is there a program? I mean, we talked about that earlier today at the Sheriff Board as far as how thorough is the program as far as testing for marijuana use? Or
Well, this was part of the discussion originally when we were going down this path, was that to file a case for someone being under the influence impaired under marijuana, you have to be a DRE expert, drug recognition expert. So there's a certain amount of training that qualifies an individual to be able to do that. And that's something that's changed over time. But there's symptomatic behavior that you can recognize through that process. And I think it's probably something that we could work on collectively, and again, kind of like what we did with mental health for the deputies. You know, we have no problem here from the city of working with whatever agency wants to make people up to a, you know, get our law enforcement people up to a certain expertise level that qualifies them for that. With the mental health aspect of training, I think we trained over 300 deputies from both stations over a period of several months working collectively there. But any suggestion that Mr. Franklin has, or the CHP captain, or for Lieutenant Fender, or whatever we may do that, it's certainly something we need to address.
I think the DRE expert, right, absolutely, and that's been effective. The problem is when you have a traffic accident and the driver's is alive, a lot of times he's suffering from a concussion or some other, and then, yeah, and then so you can't, then the nystagmus and all the other things.
And some of the problem is setting the standard for intoxication, right? Because it depends on how it's ingested. Okay, there's going to be a longer gestation period with edibles than there would be with someone smoking. Okay, so there's all kinds of variables that go along with this that are hard to pin down, where alcohol is pretty standardized based on height, weight, all these type of things, or absorption and time. So that's the problem. Okay, those are the things. Then you have the residual effect thing and how long that goes on, and then who determines what that impairment level is. And so they've actually had scientists and chemists and everything involved in this trying to establish some process. Now, Assemblyman Lackey came up with a test that I know that he was interested in, and I believe it was if it was a swab test or something that occurred there, but was shot down by the legislature. Okay, so I think for us is what qualifies these individuals to determine that. But Mr. Franklin brought up a great point. If someone's involved in an accident, there's other issues that come into play there. The only true test is blood, is my understanding, right, for level of THC.
So our department is currently working on all of this. We've been tasked with that as a statewide responsibility. So we have a whole unit up in our headquarters that's what they're doing. They're working on different tests, different types of tests that will be able to allow us to more accurately determine whether they're actually under the influence or not. In the meantime, they've allotted us a lot of funds to be able to do the training, to bring the number of DREs up, and that's for allied agencies as well. And I recently emailed both the commanders of Lancaster and Palmdale to let them know that if they want to, they can contact us and we can get them hours, so that because the DRE program, I believe it's a 2-week course and a 2-week commitment. It takes a deputy off the road or an officer off the road for a considerable amount of time. So what this does is it'll pay overtime out of those funds that have been set aside to another officer or deputy to work in that person's place, so that they don't lose that person off the road or off of patrol while they're getting the training. So that's so that we can increase the number of DREs that we have in the valley. But in the meantime, we are working on different versions of tests. They're even working on something with an iPad where it's like a simulated driving test where the person can hold it and they have to perform certain functions with it, and you can kind of tell if they're impaired or not based on what a normal person would be able to do that isn't impaired versus someone that is impaired trying to operate something like that. So all those things are in the works, but they have to get approved and everything, so you know how that goes. It might be a little while before that comes out.
So we've got a situation where we have nothing at this point in time to sit there and say until all this training is done.
Other than the DREs, and you can get the blood test, but like Mr. Franklin's saying, that's not a conclusive. Over this amount is under the influence, so therefore you're guilty, just like it would be for an alcohol case. So it makes it more complicated.
Interesting. Yeah, I think so.
that's been a long-term issue for some time now, because back in the 90s, at a law enforcement officer, based on the academy courses they took and their expertise in the field, was enough to qualify them for arresting someone for being under the influence of narcotics. That is not the case with case law anymore, as it relates to certain things. So.
And to get an officer trained to do this is not easy to do. I mean, you're taking them off the street, you're giving them, the taxpayers are paying more money to do it. There's overtime, and there's same thing with the sheriff's department, I'm assuming, correct? 2 weeks.
2-week course, so someone's got to work that patrol car for 2 weeks while that deputy's out getting trained. Those funds provide for a deputy. The deputy's already working OT training. Just kind of
Already short as it is.
I'm sure the state figured all that out when they did this, right, correct?
No.
No.
Remember, this whole regulatory aspect of this, now they've pushed the date back to January of 2019. So because of so many things are involved in the regulatory aspect of what's happening here, this is one small part of that.
Amazing. Well, it's amazing what you gentlemen have to do. It's just amazing. So, thank you so much. Jocelyn's out sick today, right, Lee? So, okay. You're up, sir.
I'm up. Okay. Well, last week I attended the sheriff's conference downtown where the sheriff came and spoke, and it's a conference we do every year with contract cities with the sheriff's department to give us updates on some of the programs. But I think and while the sheriff's department is very creative and developing things, and we had discussions regarding homelessness and some of the impact of mental health and things out there with the MET teams, and there's going to be a significant growth this year in the mental evaluation teams available to us in the North County. So that's significantly growing from when they initiated like maybe 3 teams for the entire county 2 years ago. They're going to be up to close to 15 teams by the end of this fiscal year. So that was encouraging for response for the local station to be able to deal with folks that are in some kind of distress as it relates to mental illness in the field, and where we're not tiring our field crews up to deal with those individuals. There's also some things that the city's working on its side for facility management and things as well as it relates to that. But the interesting conversation was to listen to the sheriff of what is going on with our county jail system right now, and what we're talking about when Mr. Franklin talks about 1,000 misdemeanors in 2 months, and how we're managing an adjudication of those cases. The county jails were never designed for long-term stay in county jail. They were designed for pre-sentenced inmates and then for individuals who were serving time less than a year. And then we also know under California law that 1 year already meant 180 days based on sentencing laws in California. But with the inception of AB 109 and Prop 47 and now Prop 57's implementation, the county jails population is close to 90% state holdover inmates. So those are individuals who prior to those issues would have been in state prison and not held in the county jail. So obviously what's happening now is, as we're moving forward with especially some of the reduction in crime to misdemeanors, that individuals that might be serving 180 days in the county jail are actually spending maybe at best 10% of that time, 18 days, okay, based on and then if you put in a good time, work time number into that, and then based on that fluctuation in jail population, it can be as little as 4 to 5 days. So a lot of these misdemeanor cases, even on filing and adjudication, people are getting time served and they're back out on the street. And we have a significant number now of AB 109 individuals who are out there who were never meant to be part of AB 109, with ankle monitoring for violent offenders and sex offenders as well being now managed by the Department of Probation. So these individuals are not going back to state prison. So the sheriff talked very candidly about that. I can obviously see the sheriff is on top of that issue right now and trying to come up with some solution to address that. So the department is really working in a methodology that we're already looking at, that we've been working on for some time now with intervention and diversion type programs. We're worked on a grant with Mr. Franklin that relates to some of that diversion and how we'll manage those misdemeanor cases at court. And then some programs we're looking at for expansion here at the city of using contract folks to take some of the burden off the sheriff's department as it relates to quality of life issues and some misdemeanors and expansion. And that's what Jocelyn was going to talk about, expansion of our administrative site process for certain misdemeanors. Okay, and we've been doing that with petty thefts and disturbances for a couple of years now, and we haven't been challenged yet as it related to that. So it's some talk about what is an appropriate expansion of that program as it relates to lifting the burden off the sheriff's department and the district attorney's office and the judiciary as it relates to some items that occur in our city that are more quality of life related, so they can manage more of our high profile issues. As you can see statistically, there's been a great effort going on for several months now that's showing some fruits of that labor with declining numbers in some significant type crimes that are occurring in our area. Even for the first time I can think of in a long time, our vehicle thefts are down. Our thefts from vehicles are down. So there's some things that are actively working out there. And that's what we want our law enforcement partners to be doing. Rather than some of these neighborhood dispute issues, things that could probably be handled more appropriately through fine structure diversion or mediation or community service for that matter. So what I'm going to be bringing forward to you is some proposals to just discuss that are some thinking we're doing here with some community service groups and things to more appropriately manage some of these misdemeanor cases, so individuals have an opportunity to repay back the community for the issues they've created, as well as keep some of this stuff off the plate of the judiciary, especially in light of what's happening with sentencing. Okay, so I mean, that's the issue. Mr. Franklin is very good at his job, and we get the best bang for our buck as it relates to resource management, what we input into the process based on the quality of the work that both the CHP and the Sheriff's Department put together in their cases, and then how Mr. Franklin manages his office. But there's still some issues we need to deal with individuals that are serving basically nothing for reoccurring crime. We have one Prop 47 type individual who's violated petty theft more than 300 times in the county of Los Angeles, and they spent probably a day for each individual time based on some of the things that are occurring with compound sentencing and things as well. So as we're up against those things, our job is to come up with other solutions that make the community whole again and have individuals change that behavior. So part of something that, and I've discussed a lot with the city manager as well as individuals from the community, is expanding a lot younger age that we get into that intervention model into the schools. We're going to use that similar model what we've used through the Antelope Valley Education Alliance, but move that down to a younger group of kids to try and change that behavior coming forward. I just got some news the beginning of this week that the Board of Supervisors does not want probation involved in diversion for youth, because they believe that they're creating criminals by having that scary probation officer deal with diversion and mentoring for the youth. I don't know where direction they're going, but they're looking at more involvement for community-based organizations to take on that role, which I don't know where that leaves probation in their role as it relates to youth crime. So there's a lot of things that we're looking at that the impact of some of these decisions are impacting us as a community. And so more and more, we're having to take things on at the local level with the limited resources we have to address these things, and that's a continuing priority daily of determining where we're going to put those resources and how we impact that. So the conference was good. The Sheriff's Department's doing some interesting things as it relates to homelessness, which that's the next presentation I'd like to bring forward, is what is currently the current status as it relates to case law, some of the things you've seen dealing with folks that are homeless, what the public could probably expect as they relate to reporting out on homeless camps or crime as it is occurring in the homeless community, and then how we're addressing that as a city, beyond just the housing aspect of it, but how it's impacting us resource-wise and management from law enforcement. And so those are things I'd like to bring forward as a second presentation at the next meeting, to discuss all the things, and then what the Sheriff's Department sees their role, and then how the county, we had a long discussion with representatives from the county, from the CDC and things that are also involved now at the county's level with homelessness, beyond LASA and some of the traditional groups that have been dealing with this, and where their direction is. And so everything relates back to Measure H money and how that's going to be dispersed and what the priorities are. But I'd like to have that discussion, so we can have that. And then lastly, I think I'd want to, the air show's next week, okay? And, we've got a traffic plan we've submitted out there, and we haven't changed it. We have an expectation to up to 20,000 folks a day, which is down from the past years, but we don't have either one of the aerobatic teams here this year. But we do have a pretty good demonstration from the F-22 team that will be out here, and some other things that are going to be highlighted. But again, for people need to expect, there's going to be some traffic issues that relates around Fox Field. And there will be some closures that we'll publicly put out next week, so in the local newspaper and on the city's website. And then lastly is, I just want to bring up again for your consideration and a discussion for a meeting time change, possibly changing that. And of course, it'll be whatever best accommodates everyone's schedule, but to promote the most public interaction we can have as far as the things that you are, as a commission, are dealing with here in our chambers.
Yes.
Any questions?
Rico, what are your thoughts about time change? You already have some ideas what might work.
I believe that an afternoon time change usually would be good, okay? But again, I'm open to whatever you would work best for you as a group. I think we could, if like 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon, I think would probably work very well. I know there's people out there that watch our commission meetings online, because I hear from them. But I think as far as being able to get folks in here to share their opinions or what they believe their priorities are with the commission, an afternoon meeting would be better, or early evening meeting.
I agree.
When I brought that up, I do believe that we're missing quite a bit as far as having either an evening meeting or late afternoon, and having more people participate as far as the general public. And that's, so I don't know what works into everybody's schedule. I don't know whether we should contact you, Lee, and say what our schedule should be, but I'm pretty much open to, in favor of any type of thing that would work around staff's thing.
If you'd like to, just send an email to me or to Christy Slayton, either one of us, and then we'll try and see what the consensus is among everybody and work closely with you to try and pin that down to an actual day. I believe the second week works very well already. People are accustomed to that. It's just maybe the time of day.
Okay. Thank you, Lee. Russ, Rick, come on, rock, paper, scissors.
Chairman, Commissioners, thank you for allowing us to be here today. Not much has changed since the state legislature in the last month since we met. We're still working through some of our bills. Some of them that pertain to this body is the court order treatment for convicted animal abusers. We're working on that bill right now. That's SB 1118. No, I'm sorry, SB 1024. We're looking at a few other, revising the RV lemon law, which is SB 1141. We're looking at SB 1198. These are all bills presented by Scott to give statutory authority to the Sex Offender Management Board to collect background information on sex offenders. We're also, he's presented SB 1199, requiring the California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitations to first try to place sex offenders that are released on parole, probation, or in a post-release community supervision to the city or a close geographic location where they have family, social, economic ties, as long as that's not barring why they are convicted sex offenders. The reason is Lake LA keeps coming up in the paper as the dumping ground for sex offenders, and yet a lot of those sex offenders are not even close to our community. So we're looking at that. And these are all bills that'll be probably amended, have to go to the Assembly once they get out of the Senate, and they'll all change. So I don't want to get deep into them until we actually have something that's going to be presented to the governor. We're looking at SB 1334 is a spot bill for the homeless audit recommendations. But we're looking at a few other things as we go down throughout the year. They all have to be presented at this point, then they work through the committees. I did receive this in the mail the other day, which is the legislative analysis report on the governor's budget. The Legislative Analyst's Office is a nonpartisan office, so they are pretty just online with what they recommend. They also advise the legislature. I would like to read this book if you'd like right now. It is a 2018-2019 budget. It really goes into CDCR, California Department of Corrections, really deep on their budget, how much money is being allocated. Also on the state court system, how much money is being allocated and where they'll go. Until we really get a good handle on it and how it would affect the Antelope Valley, Lee, you're welcome to browse through this if you want, and then I can come back at a later date and with the budget recommendations and see how they work in the Antelope Valley. So that's my report.
Any questions? Thanks, Rick.
Thanks, Rick.
Russ?
A couple items, as Rick mentioned, right now they're working through everything up in the Capitol. A couple of things, AB 1865, service dog protections. They're going to try to change the current law to extend protections to service dogs where they're not actively fulfilling duties and to service dogs in training. Currently, that's on its way to the Assembly Appropriations Committee. It passed with flying colors through the Public Safety Committee. So that's going to happen for the dogs. The other thing he's working on, a number of things, with a couple that caught my eye, is AB 1911, Gabriel's Law, regarding the young man who was senselessly killed here in the Antelope Valley. Calls on legislature to partner with counties to create an online database for cross-reporting allegations of child abuse and neglect amongst local law enforcement agencies. This is going to be the child welfare agencies, the district attorney's offices, will all have this database available to them that's going to go up to the interlace with the Department of Justice Child Abuse Central Index. So they're all talking to each other. So that's one of the good things I want to see if that gets put through. Currently, it's will be heard at the Public Safety Committee on the 20th. So we'll find what happens there. So that's it. And all the information I received from both Lee and Steve that I will bring back up to the summit as well. So.
Any questions? Thanks, Russ.
There you
go. Public business from the floor, non-agendized items. The portion of the agenda that allows an individual the opportunity to address the Criminal Justice Commission on any not on the agenda items. State law prohibits the commission taking any action. Items on the agenda for your matter to be referred to staff. Individual speakers are limited to 3 minutes. We have some speaker cards. Mr. David Paul.
Mr. Chairman and Commissioners, good morning. I like what you said, Mr. DeRico. These are our problems we have to solve, and that's the job of this body, and I certainly appreciate it. There's so many things, and I just wanted to let you know, the traffic thing, that's crazy, right? When I looked into it, I don't want to steal any thunder, but it's 80%. If everybody drives faster, if 80% of people, then that becomes the speed limit. That's crazy. There's a lot of crazy things. But I just wanted to let you know that I found a way. You know, I appreciate what you do because you're actually doing something. And I sometimes feel as if I don't have a role. But I finally found a way, I think, to contribute. It's called podcasting. It allows you to get your voice out, and I'm looking into doing that. And what I want to do is just help people understand that there's a value in loving and respecting the law, and it's a much better society for everybody. We just participate in making it better. So that's why I appreciate what you do so much here, all of you. I admire it, and thank you. I just wanted to stop by and say thanks.
David, thank you. You do have a lot to say, so we appreciate that. Thank you so much. You always do. Mr. John Friend.
Yes, we had my name is John Friend. I own Friend Civil Engineering and Real Estate. We had a man shot up here at the dairy the other day, shot and killed at that drive-in dairy. When I heard that, I thought, things are out of hand here. And I thought about, I'm willing to write a check to establish an account to be given over to a commission. And the idea here is to have it advertised that I don't know how to exactly do this between the two cities and the county, but for the whole Antelope Valley, this would be homeowners donate $100 a year. That's one meal a year with the family out. To donate $100 a year for each homeowner, they donate to that fund. Businesses, $1,000. Bigger companies like Lockheed and Martin and those, they want to keep their employees safe. They donate larger amounts. I'm talking about a $3 to $4 million fund. And let the word go out. We're going to give a large reward for information to catch criminals in this valley and let it get in the street. And let's say there's let me back up a second. I'd like to see one person from the DA's office on a commission for this thing, one from the sheriff's office, one for each city, and one for the unincorporated area. Actually two, one for the west side, one for the east side of the unincorporated area. And they make the decision what to give it out on the awards for information leading to arrest and capture the criminals. Like a home invasion, let's say $10,000 reward. They're not going to get $10,000 what they steal out of a home typically, I don't think, because it's pennies on the dollar they get. But their so-called friends will turn them in to get that money. A carjacking, $15,000. You walk in a business to rob it and you have a gun on you, $25,000. You shoot and kill someone in that business, $50,000. It's going to take about $3-4 million to keep a thing like this going. So that's the proposal. The other thing is I'd like to see the cities put a budget in for 2 more police officers in a K-9 unit in each town. This would be used to have a voluntary program. If people are working down the below, they come and they stay in their house that day. Have a shell game. It increases the effectiveness of your police department. They get shot and bit if they break in that house, but really advertise it. Thank you. Those 2 things might help dampen your crime up here.
Mr. Friend?
Mr. Friend? John. Let's say.
Andy's going to get, Mr. Friend, can we get your contact information? I'm going to call you in for a meeting with me, please.
Mr. Friend, thank you so much. Liked your comments. Thank you, sir.
How's Stephen doing?
Yeah, Lee, I didn't quite hear what you said about, about the, they took those guys off of probation and they wanted to have somebody else help them. Because you said they felt they were treating them like criminals or something. Who were the other people they put in there?
No, it's the Board of Supervisors is proposing to the Department of Probation not to have probation involved in youth conversion. Probation officers themselves.
But who are they suggesting?
Community-based organizations and nonprofits can take up that measure.
Thank you, John. Appreciate it. Shannon McDonald.
Good morning. I have a few topics I wanted to focus on. Good morning, everyone, Chairman, all the commissioners up here. I want to come up about illegal dumping, but I can do this in 3 minutes. I know I can. Number one, if one is getting pulled over, it's probable cause already. Because I feel like if you're driving like you're supposed to be driving, you have no reason to get pulled over. The level of THC in the system, it takes a number of days to exit the system, no matter what method you use, whether it be urine, blood, and that marijuana probably takes the longest to get out of your system. So I think that if someone's being pulled over and the suspicion is marijuana, then there's different tests that can be taken. There's obviously other laws that protect, perpetrators or whatever the case is, but marijuana stays in the system for a minute. Like, the levels are we're going to tell you. Like, if it's just tiny, tiny, minute amounts, then it might be something else. But if there's high levels, then, I mean, it's not the same as CBD. Obviously, that's the medicinal part of it that I actually advocate for, but I don't advocate for recreational marijuana at all. That's just me. The THC levels, in case I'm sure everybody here knows, but they're still unlawful by the federal government. And everyone, like people that, even certain people that I know, I don't associate with very often, that want to sit up and advocate and say, oh, it's legal, it's legal. It's not that legal if the federal government hasn't legalized it. You know, states are one thing, but when the federal government doesn't legalize it, it's not that legal. Let me see. One thing about the whole guns thing, the whole shooting thing, my issue is not gun control. My issue is dealing with the mental illness of people. That's the second topic I wanted to speak on. I don't think that we need to be focusing more as much on gun control as we do the mental illness and dealing with that issue. I think the wrong people obviously get guns in their hands, but there's a lot of mental illness that is not, a lot of people don't want to talk about. It's not being talked about. There's a bunch of walkouts being talked about, this and that, but no one's talking about the actual top of the issue is the mental illness. Because, I mean, it's easier to be bad than it is to be good. It takes a lot of work to be good. It took me a lot of years to be good, you know what I'm saying? Like, to do the right thing, you know what I mean? It was so easy to be bad. I can be bad anytime I want to. It's a lot of work to be good. I choose to be good. Okay, I got 44 seconds. Hold on. Okay, this is the third one. This is the number one reason why I came up here. The illegal dumping. I'm getting numerous calls, being architectural and design commissioner. I've gotten calls from people telling me about illegal dumping. And what frustrated me was the fact that when I made the call to fix the solution, I was getting sent to the sheriff's department. That was frustrating for me because I said, why am I being redirected to the sheriff's department? Why is the sheriff's department dealing with this when we need to have those resources for other things, not for them to take care of illegal dumping? I went down Lancaster Boulevard to come here. I live on 50th and J on the west side, and I came down Lancaster Boulevard. I see shopping carts. I see a bunch of bags over here. This is all by Walmart and all our businesses. I'm sorry, just give me a couple more seconds. And I feel like it's really ridiculous that our sheriff's department has to deal with illegal dumping. We should have a whole different entity that deals with graffiti and illegal dumping, not a sheriff's department, because I got transferred 6 times. And finally I had to say, okay, well, I'm Miss McDonald, Commissioner of Architectural Design, and I want this cleaned up right now. Since I have to deal with the sheriff's department, I was not happy though. I want the sheriff's department to deal with other issues. I don't want you guys to deal with illegal dumping. That's ridiculous to me. I just wanted to tell you guys that. That's all I have to say. You have a nice day, okay?
Shannon, thank you so much. Appreciate it. Commissioner comments, anything? Oh, Howard.
I'd like to just make one little pledge here for our casino night. I was going to leave these with Leah. I don't know if you guys have them in City Hall posted or not, but our casino night that the Sheriff Boosters has every year is going to be on April 7th. What's really unique about this year is for $75 entrance, you will have the opportunity to win a car. Everybody that attends will have an opportunity to win a car of $35,000. You have to be present to win. The tickets are $75, and all proceeds will go towards buying equipment for the Sheriff Department. So if anyone is interested, see me directly following the meeting. And other than that, I don't have anything else. Thank you.
Anything else? We'll stand adjourned until May 9th at 10 a.m. 2018.